So in this video, we're going to animate the interior lights we had added in the previous video. And we're going to animate them so they turn on when the daylight system, basically the sun sets, when it gets dark. So when it's dark out, we want the interior lights to go on. So first thing I got to figure is just what frame I want the interior lights to turn on. So I just know from previously working in this file, my daylight system gets pretty low on the horizon around frame 251. So if I slide down to 251, that's where I'm going to want a keyframe to turn the light on and off, the interior light, basically I want to turn on. To start off with, I'm going to turn the interior light, the Omni light, off. I'm changing the multiplier to 0 in the Modify panel. So that's changing it throughout the whole file now. So my 300 frames right now, my Omni lights are turned off. To animate it, I got to move my slider down to 0. So at frame 0, the multiplier for that Omni light is 0. Since the other Omni light is an instance, it also is getting these same changes. I got to turn the auto key button on. It's going to memorize any changes I make to the properties of the light. Then I'm going to move up to frame 251. And then I'm going to set the multiplier of that Omni light to 60. I'm turning the interior light on at frame 251. Now we're not quite set right yet. If you notice here as I move the slider, the multiplier in the Modify panel is changing. So the light is turned off at frame 0, but then it just gradually goes up to a multiplier of 60 at frame 251. What I want, though, is to have the light just turn on. So I turned auto key off, and I'm moving at frame 0 up to frame 251. So I just left-clicked over that keyframe and slid it. So now the light stays off. It keeps that multiplier of 0, that setting, on the entire time up to frame 250. And then frame 251, the multiplier goes right up to 60. So in that one frame, we've just turned on the light switch. And then the rest of the animation, the lights stay at a multiplier of 60. So from frame 0 to 250, the multiplier is 0. The interior lights are off. The daylight system will move, though, throughout its whole cycle there. So it's going to go from sunrise to sunset. So my settings here, I hit F10. In my indirect illumination, just making sure my final gather settings are on. In my Common tab, I'm going to turn on Active Time Segment. I want to render out this animation. So I'm going to change the pixel height and width to 320 by 240 pixels just so it renders quickly. That's a pretty small size. Render output, clicking on Save File. I'm going to click on the Files button, browse out to where I want to save it. Before we had done the light study in the previous video, basically it's the same setup here. So I'm just giving it a name, Indoor Lighting, saving it as an AVI. I got to make sure my viewport is at perspective view, so I can change that. And then just render it out. So now all 300 frames will render out. So we'll start with the sunlight system coming up in the morning. The interior lights will be turned off. And then by the time we get to frame 250, it'll be dark. And then the interior lights will turn on. So here as this first frame renders out, it tells me it's going to take a little over 3 hours for this to render. So I just let the machine sit there and render. And then when it's done rendering, I just go out to where I saved that AVI file, that animation file, double click on it, and then play it in Windows Media Player. And that's the end of this video.